The Ghost Town Heist. Shadows of the Forgotten, written by Reuben White. Prologue, the legend of the ghost town in the heart of the Nevada desert, where the relentless sun beats down upon the barren landscape, there lies a ghost town shrouded in mystery and dread. Its name, if it ever had one, has long been forgotten, buried beneath layers of dust and decay. To those who know of its existence, it is simply referred to as the graveyard of the lost. Legend has it that the town was once a bustling hub of activity, a beacon of hope amid the harsh desert terrain. But prosperity turned to ruin when tragedy struck, leaving the town abandoned and its streets haunted by the ghosts of its past. Whispers of curses and dark rituals echo through the crumbling buildings, a testament to the town's mysterious and sinister history. But perhaps the most tantalizing rumor of all is the legend of the treasure rumored to be hidden within the town's walls. Gold and jewels said to be worth a fortune, lost to time and waiting to be discovered by those brave or foolish enough to seek them out. Many have ventured into the ghost town in search of the treasure, but none have returned, their fate forever entwined with the secrets that lie buried beneath the desert sands. As the sun sets on the horizon, casting long shadows across the deserted streets, the ghost town awaits its next visitors. And whether they come in search of riches or redemption, they will find more than they bargained for within its crumbling walls. For in the graveyard of the lost, the dead do not rest easy, and the secrets they guard are worth more than any earthly treasure. Chapter 1. Gathering shadows. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale glow over the desolate landscape as Jackson, Iron Hand, Kane led his band of outlaws toward the outskirts of the ghost town. Each step stirred up clouds of dust, the only sound the crunch of gravel beneath their boots. As they approached the town's edge, the air grew heavy with a sense of foreboding, as if the very earth itself recoiled at their presence. Leading the group was Jackson, his rugged features illuminated by the faint light of the moon. His eyes gleamed with a fierce determination, a hunger for the treasure that lay hidden within the ghost town's walls. Close behind him walked Sarah Whisper McAllister, her slender frame wrapped in shadows, her eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of danger. Bringing up the rear were Caleb Slick Johnson and Ezekiel Bones Malone, their faces hidden beneath the brims of their hats as they followed in the footsteps of their leader. Caleb's easy grin belied the tension that coiled beneath his skin, while Ezekiel's youthful bravado masked the uncertainty that gnawed at his gut. As they reached the edge of the town, Jackson called a halt, his voice low and urgent. The outlaws gathered around him, their faces illuminated by the faint flicker of torchlight. In the distance, the ghost town loomed like a specter, its darkened windows staring out into the night with silent accusation. "All right, listen up," Jackson began, his voice gravelly with determination. "We're here for one thing and one thing only, the treasure hidden within those walls. But make no mistake, this ain't gonna be easy. The town's cursed, haunted by the ghosts of its past. We'll need to move fast if we want to make it out alive." Sarah nodded, her expression grim. "Agreed. We'll need to stay together and watch each other's backs. The spirits here won't take kindly to intruders." Caleb chuckled nervously, his hand straying to the revolver at his hip. "Well, ain't this just a lovely welcoming committee? Remind me why we thought this was a good idea again." Jackson's gaze hardened, his jaw clenched with determination. "Because the treasure's worth it, Caleb. And if we don't take it, someone else will. Now, here's the plan." With that, Jackson outlined their strategy, emphasizing the importance of secrecy and speed. They would split up into pairs, each taking a different route through the town in search of the treasure. They would rendezvous at the town center once they had found it, then make their escape before the spirits could catch up to them. As the outlaws nodded in agreement, a chill wind swept through the deserted streets, carrying with it the faint echoes of distant whispers. The ghost town awaited, its secrets hidden in the shadows, ready to ensnare those who dared to brave its depths. And as the outlaws set foot within its crumbling walls, they knew that they were about to embark on a journey from which there would be no turning back. Chapter 2. Into the darkness the ghost town loomed before them, its dilapidated buildings casting long, twisted shadows across the deserted streets. As the outlaws stepped through the crumbling archway that marked the town's entrance, a shiver ran down their spines, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Sarah's footsteps echoed softly against the cobblestones as she led the way, her senses on high alert for any sign of danger. Jackson followed close behind, his grip tight on the handle of his revolver, his eyes scanning the darkness for any movement. Caleb trailed behind them, his usual swagger replaced by a nervous energy that seemed to crackle in the air around him. "So, anyone know any good ghost stories?" he quipped, his voice echoing off the walls of the abandoned buildings. "I hear this place is haunted." Ezekiel shot him a withering glance. "Now's not the time for jokes, Caleb. We need to stay focused if we're gonna find the treasure and get out of here in one piece." But Caleb just shrugged, his bravado faltering in the face of the eerie atmosphere that surrounded them. "Hey, lighten up, Bones. We're gonna be rich by the time we leave this place. What's there to be afraid of?" As they ventured deeper into the heart of the ghost town, the shadows seemed to grow thicker, pressing in on them from all sides. The air was thick with dust and the scent of decay, and every creak of a floorboard sent shivers down their spines. Suddenly, Sarah froze in her tracks, her hand instinctively reaching for the revolver at her hip. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. The others fell silent, straining their ears for any sign of movement. And then they heard it, a faint rustling sound, like the whisper of leaves in the wind. Jackson tensed, his muscles coiled with anticipation. "Stay alert, everyone. We're not alone in here." With that, they pressed on, their senses on high alert for any sign of danger. But as they ventured deeper into the darkness, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, waiting in the shadows for the perfect moment to strike. And as Caleb's nervous laughter echoed off the walls of the deserted buildings, the tension that hung in the air remained, a silent reminder of the danger that lurked in the heart of the ghost town. Chapter 3, Whispers in the Dark. As the outlaws ventured deeper into the heart of the ghost town, the air grew heavy with a sense of unease. Strange occurrences began to unsettle them, like whispers in the dark that danced just beyond the edges of their perception. Sarah's keen eyes caught movement in the shadows, fleeting glimpses of figures that seemed to vanish as quickly as they appeared. She tried to dismiss them as tricks of the light, but the feeling of being watched lingered like a shadow at her back. Caleb's attempts to lighten the mood with jokes fell flat as the tension in the air thickened with each passing moment. Even he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more sinister than they had anticipated. And then they heard it, whispers carried on the wind, faint and insubstantial, like the echoes of a long-forgotten conversation. The outlaws exchanged wary glances, their fingers tightening around the grips of their weapons as they searched for the source of the sound. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped forward, her footsteps echoing off the walls of the deserted buildings. And then, as if drawn by some unseen force, she found herself standing before a crumbling brick wall, its surface marred by years of neglect. Etched into the brick was a cryptic message, its letters faded and worn with age. Sarah squinted in the dim light, trying to make out the words written there. "Beware the shadows," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. Jackson stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he studied the message. "What do you make of it?" he asked, his voice low with suspicion. But before Sarah could respond, a sudden gust of wind swept through the deserted street, extinguishing their torches and plunging them into darkness. And as the outlaws stood there in the blackness, the whispers grew louder, surrounding them like a chorus of ghosts from the past. With a sense of growing dread, they realized that they were not alone in the ghost town. And as they braced themselves for whatever horrors awaited them in the darkness, they knew that they were about to confront a truth far more terrifying than anything they had ever imagined. Chapter 4, Unearthly Encounters. The darkness pressed in on the outlaws like a suffocating blanket as they stumbled through the deserted streets of the ghost town. Whispers swirled around them, carrying with them the faint echoes of long-forgotten voices. And then, without warning, the shadows began to move. At first, it was just a flicker out of the corner of their eyes, a movement too quick to catch. But then the shadows coalesced into tangible forms, twisting and writhing like smoke in the night. The outlaws drew their weapons, their hearts pounding with fear and adrenaline as they prepared to face whatever horror awaited them. And then the attack came, swift and merciless. Hands reached out from the darkness, clawing at their flesh with a strength that belied their ethereal form. Sarah cried out as she felt icy fingers close around her throat, dragging her back into the blackness. With a roar of rage, Jackson lunged forward, his revolver blazing as he fought to free his companions from the grasp of the unseen assailants. Caleb and Ezekiel joined the fray, their weapons flashing in the darkness as they battled against the forces that sought to consume them. But the spirits were relentless, their anger palpable in the chill of the night air. With each passing moment, the outlaws felt their strength waning, their resolve crumbling beneath the weight of the supernatural onslaught. Just when it seemed that all hope was lost, a burst of light pierced the darkness, banishing the shadows back into the depths from whence they came. Gasping for breath, the outlaws stumbled forward, their bodies battered and bruised but their spirits unbroken. As they caught their breath, Jackson's eyes gleamed with a fierce determination. "We can't let this place beat us," he declared, his voice ringing out with a steely resolve. "We came here for the treasure, and by God, we're gonna find it." And with that, they pressed on, their resolve renewed by the knowledge that they had narrowly escaped with their lives. For Jackson, the treasure represented more than just wealth, it was a symbol of his determination to conquer the darkness that threatened to consume them all. Chapter 5, Secrets Revealed. In the dim light of a flickering lantern, the outlaws huddled together as they pored over the cryptic clues they had discovered. Symbols etched into crumbling walls and faded manuscripts hinted at the dark history of the ghost town and the malevolent force that held it captive. Sarah's brow furrowed as she studied the symbols, a sense of unease settling in the pit of her stomach. Memories from her childhood surfaced, ghost stories whispered around campfires, tales of restless spirits doomed to wander the earth in search of revenge. "I remember hearing stories about this place," she murmured, her voice barely more than a whisper. "My grandfather used to tell me about the ghost town and the curse that befell it. I never believed them until now." Her words hung heavy in the air, adding to the sense of dread that permeated the abandoned streets. Caleb shifted uneasily, his eyes darting nervously from one shadowed corner to the next. "Maybe we should reconsider this heist," he suggested, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "I mean, we've already seen what this place is capable of. Is the treasure really worth the risk?" But Jackson's eyes blazed with a fierce determination, his resolve unshaken by the revelations they had uncovered. "We've come too far to turn back now," he declared, his voice ringing out with conviction. "We're not leaving empty-handed." With that, he gathered up the clues they had found, his mind already racing ahead to the next step in their quest. The outlaws exchanged uneasy glances, their doubts momentarily silenced by the force of Jackson's will. But as they prepared to venture deeper into the heart of the ghost town, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing a dangerous game, one whose stakes were higher than they could have ever imagined. And as they set out once more into the darkness, they knew that they were about to confront the true nature of the supernatural threat that lurked within the abandoned streets. Chapter 6, Confronting the past. The ghost town seemed to grow more oppressive with each step the outlaws took, its shadowy streets winding like a labyrinth of forgotten memories. Sarah's mind raced as she tried to piece together the clues they had uncovered, her thoughts drifting back to the ghost stories of her childhood. She remembered her grandmother's tales of restless spirits and vengeful ghosts, stories meant to warn her away from places like this. But now, as she stood on the threshold of the unknown, those stories felt more real than ever, adding to the sense of dread that hung in the air like a thick fog. Caleb glanced nervously at the others, his usual swagger replaced by a haunted look in his eyes. "You guys ever get the feeling that maybe we should just cut our losses and get out of here?" he muttered, his voice barely more than a whisper. Jackson's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched with determination. "We've come too far to turn back now, Caleb. We're not leaving until we find that treasure." But Caleb shook his head, his hands trembling with fear. "Maybe some treasures are best left buried," he muttered, his voice tinged with regret. Ezekiel's insecurities came to the surface as he struggled to keep up with the others, his youthful bravado masking a deep-seated fear of failure. He stumbled over cobblestones and tripped over his own feet, his heart pounding in his chest as he fought to keep pace with his companions. As they delved deeper into the heart of the ghost town, the outlaws confronted their own inner demons, their pasts looming large in the shadows that surrounded them. Jackson's obsession with the treasure threatened to tear the group apart, his single-minded determination blinding him to the dangers that lurked within the darkness. But as they faced their fears together, the bonds that held them together grew stronger, their shared experiences forging a connection that transcended words. And as they pressed on, their resolve strengthened by the knowledge that they were not alone in their struggle, they knew that they would face whatever lay ahead, united in their quest for redemption and riches. Chapter 7, The Final Showdown. The outlaws pressed forward, their footsteps echoing through the deserted streets as they neared the heart of the ghost town. The air crackled with tension, and a sense of impending doom hung heavy in the air. With each passing moment, the weight of their quest bore down upon them like a leaden cloak. As they reached the town square, they found themselves standing before a crumbling building, its once grand facade now reduced to little more than a shell. This was it, the final destination, where the treasure was said to be hidden. But as they stepped through the threshold, they were greeted not by the glint of gold or jewels, but by the vengeful spirits of the forgotten, their ghostly forms swirling like shadows in the darkness. Eyes gleaming with malice, they barred the way forward, their spectral forms pulsing with a sinister energy. Jackson raised his revolver, his jaw set in a grim line. "We're not leaving here empty-handed," he declared, his voice ringing out with a steely resolve. But the spirits only laughed, their voices echoing off the walls of the abandoned building like a chorus of the damned. "You dare to trespass in our domain," they hissed, their words dripping with venom. "You shall pay the price for your greed." With a roar of rage, the outlaws launched themselves into battle, their weapons flashing in the dim light as they fought tooth and nail against the spectral horde. Sarah's nimble fingers danced across the keys of her lockpick, while Caleb's revolver blazed with righteous fury. But for every spirit they banished, two more seemed to take its place, their numbers seemingly endless. The outlaws fought with all their might, their courage and resolve tested to the breaking point. As the battle raged on, Jackson felt a sense of desperation creeping over him, his determination to claim the treasure warring with the realization that they were hopelessly outnumbered. But still, he refused to back down, his iron will driving him forward even as his strength began to wane. And then, just when it seemed that all hope was lost, a blinding light filled the room, banishing the darkness and sending the spirits fleeing into the shadows. Gasping for breath, the outlaws collapsed to the ground, their bodies battered and bruised but their spirits unbroken. As they emerged from the abandoned building, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, they knew that they had faced their greatest challenge and emerged victorious. And though the treasure they sought remained elusive, they knew that they had gained something far more valuable, the knowledge that they were capable of confronting their fears and emerging stronger on the other side. Chapter 8, Escape from the shadows. The echoes of their desperate struggle still reverberated through the deserted streets as the outlaws staggered out of the ghost town, their bodies weary and spirits heavy with the weight of what they had faced. They moved like shadows, their movements slow and unsteady, as if they carried the burden of the town's cursed past upon their shoulders. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps as she leaned against the nearest crumbling wall, her hands trembling as she tried to steady herself. Her mind raced with images of the vengeful spirits that had hunted them, their eyes burning with an otherworldly fury that chilled her to the bone. Caleb stumbled forward, his eyes haunted by the memories of their narrow escape. "I can't believe we made it out alive," he muttered, his voice barely more than a whisper. Ezekiel nodded, his face pale beneath the layer of dust and grime that coated his skin. "I thought for sure we were done for back there," he admitted, his voice trembling with relief. But Jackson remained silent, his eyes fixed on the horizon as the first light of dawn broke over the desert landscape. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what they had left behind in the ghost town. As they emerged into the light of dawn, battered and bruised but alive, Jackson felt a sense of profound loss wash over him. The treasure they had sought seemed insignificant now, a mere trinket compared to the price they had paid for it. "Some treasures are not worth the price they demand," he murmured, his voice barely audible above the sound of the wind. "We were fools to think otherwise." And as they stood there in the harsh glare of the morning sun, Jackson knew that they would carry the memory of their ordeal with them for the rest of their days. For in the end, they had learned a valuable lesson, that some treasures were best left buried, and that the true wealth lay not in gold or jewels, but in the bonds of friendship and the strength to face one's fears. Epilogue. Shadows linger as the sun rose over the Nevada desert, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. The outlaws emerged from the ghost town, their spirits battered and bruised, but their resolve unbroken. They stumbled across the desert sands, leaving behind the crumbling ruins and the ghosts that haunted them. But even as they left the ghost town behind, its memory lingered like a shadow in their minds. They knew that they would never truly be free of its grasp, that the horrors they had witnessed would stay with them for the rest of their days. Jackson led the way, his footsteps heavy with the weight of regret. He had thought that the treasure was worth any price, but now he knew that some treasures were not meant to be claimed. They were cursed, tainted by the darkness that lurked within the ghost town's walls. Sarah walked beside him, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She had sought redemption in the treasure, but now she realized that true redemption could only be found within herself. She vowed to leave behind the sins of her past and forge a new path forward, one free from the shadows that had haunted her for so long. Caleb and Ezekiel followed behind, their faces drawn and weary. They had come seeking riches, but now they understood that true wealth lay in the bonds of friendship and the strength of the human spirit. They promised to keep in touch, to remind each other of the horrors they had faced and the triumphs they had achieved. As they went their separate ways, the ghost town remained, its secrets hidden in the shadows, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to uncover them. But for the outlaws, the adventure was over, their journey through the darkness at an end. And as they walked into the light of a new day, they knew that they had emerged from the shadows forever changed, their hearts hardened by the trials they had faced, but their spirits stronger than ever before. For in the end, they had confronted their fears and emerged victorious, their souls forever intertwined by the bonds of friendship and the shared memory of their encounter with the supernatural. If you are enjoying the Mystery Within channel, hit the subscribe, follow, or like buttons for future posts.